Welcome, everyone, to officially day one of the Journey Forward virtual retreat. I am so excited. I know there is a few of us here live, and there are many people who are watching the replay. And I am just thrilled for the community that we've created and the intentions that we have set to be able to create some space in our day to be present, to meditate, to be open to journaling, and then to be able to engage in insightful, impactful, hopefully inspiring conversations. And I am really, really pleased that my friend Deborah Fryer is here on day one. Deborah and we've connected maybe about a year ago, and it was just one of those connections that I thought, oh, she's really special and her wisdom is so deep. So, it's really beautiful to continue to connect and to share conversations with others. So I would like to just begin by inviting everyone to take a collective breath. It's the end of the day, so I really invite you for the next hour to let go of whatever came before. Allow yourself to be present in this moment and to not worry about what's next. And this moment is a gift of time, and grateful to be able to delve into conversation with Deborah. So, Deborah, please introduce yourself, and then we can get going with some of our alchemy that I know we're going to create here today.
Thank you for inviting me to share. And thank you, all of you who are here in person. Whenever I'm invited to share about myself, I always notice a kind of, I don't know what to say. And the reason that I feel that, and the reason that I'm going to say what I'm going to say in this community, is that we're so much more than who we think we are. We're so much more than the stories we tell about ourselves. And I could tell you about my accomplishments. I could tell you about my PhD. I could tell you about all the yoga trainings I've done. I could tell you about all the money that I've made. And you know what? It's like this little hair thingy, that's keeping my hair tied. Like, it's so irrelevant in terms of the breath of life, the soul I am, the multidimensional being I am that exists in all forms and the formless at the same time. And Jory and I share that we're both born into a Jewish lineage, and as women, we carry the Jewish lineage, and we're in a pillar of awe-inspiring time right now. And we're also so devoted to our meditative practices, which have nothing to do with any spiritual tradition. They have to do with tapping into accessing the awareness of the formlessness that you are before anybody handed you a religion, before anybody handed you a name. And so, I could give you lots of things I've done, and initials after my name that I sometimes identify with. But in this current moment, I feel so much of my soul self, of my spirit self, of
Love that.
myself that's both solid in a body, and I'm also liquid, and I'm also gas, and I'm also misty white substance, right? And I'm all of it. And every single one of you is all of it. And I know that the reason that you're here in this container with us is because there's a perception that you've had about you where you have perceived yourself as not being where you want to be, and you're all of it at the same time. So that's what I want to say by way of introduction. I'm sure we're going to have a juicy conversation about more of
Uh,
that. You can Google me and you can find out a gajillion things about me, but really none of them gets to like the soul creator, love, compassion, juiciness that
yes.
we're made of. And I don't
Oh,
want to put myself in a box, and I know you don't either.
no. And Deborah, like, even if you and I said nothing further than what you just said, it's almost enough, which we're more than our narrative. We're more than this body. We are of spirit. We are of essence. We are more than the things that we perceive others to define us. And in whatever belief system we have that we're not where we want to be, it's only based on a thought that we should be in a certain place. And it's just a thought. I often like to
Right.
say, says who, right? Who
Right.
says who? Like this imaginary I that's like over here telling me what to do based on an arbitrary belief system. And I know when you and I were connecting, kind of setting up our timing and deciding which day of the week you would be here, it just felt so aligned that today is, really entering into the Jewish New Year. That really is the birth of the world, right? Put Judaism aside. This is really about the birth of the world and creation and the beginning. And, we even were to looking at the symbolism of the today's date, which
Mm.
in Hebrew is chai, which means to life, right? And
Mhm.
so it's our spirit. So there's so much alignment
Right.
of you and I being here together in this conversation. And what an opportunity to begin again,
Mm.
right? It's a new beginning, right? This is our choice to begin again of, okay, so maybe I'm not where I thought I was. Well, where do I want to be right now? And what would
Mm.
that look like?
Mm.
So as I say all that, what comes up for you? Because I know that there's so much in that.
There's so much in that. I'm not where I thought I was, and I'm not where I want to be. And as Winnie the Pooh says, wise old bear, "Oh, wherever you are, there you are."
Yeah,
And wherever we are, whatever moment we're in this moment is the only moment.
yeah.
Wherever you think you're not, you brought that part of you into this now moment, right? So there's a way that you're bringing to life what you think you're not in this now moment. And where you think you haven't arrived yet, you are that potential. You're like an acorn that has the potential of the seed in it. We just
Mhm.
planted, we ripped out our grass. We live in an HOA and we live in Colorado. And, living in the Mountain West, it's arid and it makes no sense for us to have grass. It doesn't make sense from a perspective of water conservation. It doesn't make sense in terms of supporting the pollinators. And so we ripped out our grass and we just planted 200 native plants. And
Mhm.
all those little baby plants, when they went in the earth, are tiny. And all those plants, when we continue to water them and nurture them and weed them and talk to them and love them, they're going to go from this big to this big. Like there, it can't be any other way. So, when there's a part of you that's like, I'm not where I want to be, the universe is expanding. That is a given. Scientists prove that. You are in the universe. Every breath, you're breathing the universe into you. Let's all do it right now. So you just breathed from the one into you. And now the universe is in you and it's animating every cell, it's oxygenating, and all those cells will the red blood cells will carry the oxygen, will distribute it to your brain and your muscles and your organs and other cells, and it'll drop the oxygen molecules off, like letting school kids off the bus. And then next stuff is going to get on the bus that wants to leave your body, right? The CO2 and the metabolic waste and the lactic acid. And in that process of exchanging with the universe, now, when you exhale, how about if you let the universe stay and you exhale and then you breathe in the universe? And now the universe is in you and it is you. It's literally becoming you. There's no separation between the you are now and the future you. In the same way, there's no separation between the parts of me that I identify as solid. That just means molecules are more closely packed together. Those are my
Mhm.
bones, right? We take that as physically solid. I might also have some thought forms that I think are solid. I like, oh, I'm never going to be like that. I'm never going to make that money. I'm never going to have the love of my life. Whatever the thing is that we say, I'm always going to be like that. The reality is, right? We all say these kinds of things. And if we don't realize we say these kinds of things, we all do catch ourselves, right? So those are our solidity, right? But at the same time, I'm liquid. I'm mostly
Yeah.
water. I'm mostly not solid. I'm mostly liquid. And at the same time, every molecule of me and every molecule of you is 99.99999% space. So I'm mostly not solid, but I identify as solid. So when you say, I'm not where I want to be, I would love to invite you to provoke you perhaps challenge you, perhaps inspire you to think of it in a different way, because you're always expanding into the next version of you. Hair's always
Mhm.
growing out of your head. It's not like flying in from outer space and landing on your head. It's growing out of you. Your fingernails are growing out of you. So the next version of you, your desire, what you want to not do anymore, it's growing out of you. It can't be any other way. And
Yeah.
and there's a way that we're able to collapse time when we go beyond the conscious mind, which thinks in a very linear way. We call this chronos, like chronological time, which goes, you know, 2023, 2024, 2025, etc., right? Or 5437, 5438.
Right.
But we count in a linear way, as if that thing is in the past and this thing hasn't happened yet. Everything is happening at the same time. And
Yeah.
if your mind is like, just like be in the because it is, right? The trees are dropping their leaves right now. Some of the trees are turning yellow and they're dropping the leaves, and we have new roses that are flowering. How are things blooming and also dropping at the same time?
Yeah.
You're growing new fingernails. If you're a woman, chances are you washed your hair and you had to pull some hair out of the drain because it fell out, right? You're growing new hair and you're losing at the same time. And this entire creative cycle is one cycle. It's not that only growth happens and then it stops and then letting go happens. And then it
Mhm.
stops and then I'm ready to begin again. That's not how life happens. And we get so
Yeah.
stuck if we compartmentalize time like that.
And therefore, we also compartmentalize and think that our thoughts about ourselves, about our life, about our relationships are static, that we think those things aren't growing either.
Right.
And these thoughts that I think, well, the thoughts that I observe in both myself and so many others become capital T truth without realizing that's the same thing as the breath we're breathing in and out. But yet we hold on to this one belief system. And Deborah, I've talked with you a handful of times in both a in kind of personal and more professional way in which the power of our belief systems really interrupt our belief in self, our belief in growth, and whether it's looking at it from a basis of law of attraction, of I'm bringing in the very thing that I don't want by continuing to say what I don't want.
Right.
So can we talk about that a little bit, because there's like this very conceptual spiritual approach, and we name some of that, and now let's get into some of the okay, but now what, right? For someone who says, Deborah, I fully understand what you're saying, what do I actually do to allow myself to grow into the me that is in me now but isn't quite out yet? What's like the tangible stuff? Because people that I work with day in day out say, okay, but how, but how. And I always respond, well, if you focus on the how, that's the obstacle, right? That's going to be one of the things to prevent you from reaching your desire or getting in the way of interfering with getting clarity on who I am in this moment, in this iteration of time. We have these barriers, and we also need a tool set.
Hmm. So if you're operating from a perspective of, I'm not where I want to be right now, your brain, the brain, physiologically doesn't know the difference between what you tell it the reality is, which is you looking at your past.
Mm,
Your brain doesn't know the difference between that reality and between imagination. Your brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. So if we're operating from the perspective of, I don't have this thing yet, that's what we're focusing on. Another trope that we hear often is what we resist persists, right? Have you heard that? What we
mhm,
resist persists, or what we run from runs us. So if we
mm,
keep focusing our energy on, if I keep looking at, well, okay, let's take a concrete example. Let's say I'm driving and I'm speeding because I'm in a hurry to get where I want to go. So I don't look at the road in front of me. I keep looking in the rear view mirror to see, is somebody chasing me? Is somebody chasing me? Is somebody chasing me? Right? So if that's going to be the way that we run our lives, by effectively driving with fear, driving, we're in a hurry to get there. But when we're in fear, that actually slows us down. When
Mhm.
we're in reactivity, that actually slows us
Well,
down.
well, yeah, our attention's looking backwards.
Right. And so we're looking in the rear view mirror for what's chasing us. The exact same thing happens in our mindset, which is you want to experience, pick anything that's in your future that you haven't yet experienced. You want to call in your beloved. You want to buy a new house. You want to go on vacation to Bali for a month. You want to break through a new financial goal. You want to retire, whatever it is. There's no judgment around what your desire is. That's very
Mm-mm.
personal. The only way we can have a desire is because we don't have the thing we perceive, we don't have the thing, and that's why we have a desire. So first off, I want you to recognize that hidden inside of every desire is the not having of the thing. Okay? Is this making sense for y'all?
Well, yeah,
Give me a
because if I
thumbs
had the
up
thing,
or
yeah, if
something.
I put it in the chat, if this makes sense, because if we had the thing, then I wouldn't desire the thing because the thing would already be here.
Right. And so these are two very different brain chemistries that we're running. They're completely different brain chemistry. The brain chemistry of desire, it requires me not to have the thing. I have to not have the thing. I have to have lack. I have to have a wanting. Want actually means to lack. I have to have that wanting in order to have the desire. So recognize right off the bat that if you're somebody who's like, I don't have the thing, it's because of the desire for having the thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I want you to recognize that there's a totality, because if you just focus on the not having the thing, you're going to create a whole bunch more of you not having the thing. That's how it works.
Yeah.
It's like that's what you're looking at. And because that's what you're looking at, wherever your attention goes, that's where your energy flows. And wherever energy flows, it eventually will become matter. Because energy in its diffuse form, we call it energy. In its more compressed form, we call it matter. Wherever your energy flows, you're gonna develop the reality.
So
Making sense?
I'm gonna ask a question that people might be thinking right now. So is there a way to have a desire without attracting the lack?
Both
Or is that
exist all the time. It's not that you're attracting lack. We always and so from my perspective, and I invite you to, listen to what I'm saying and try it on, and you can completely reject it. Feel free to completely disagree. Feel free to, be like, no, 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 there's no way that can possibly make sense. But in my belief system, everything is contributing to the wholeness, and everything is contributing to a wholeness, and then a bigger 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 wholeness. Everything is contributing. So we're not attracting lack. Lack is always there. When we
Mhm.
look at it, we see it. When we look for it, we see it. When we look for more of it, we see more of it. And if we stop looking for it, we'll stop seeing it. It's still in the field. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's just that you're not paying any attention to it. Does that make any sense?
Yeah,
It's a
so
different come from.
it almost feels like shining your flashlight in a different direction.
Yes. Right. So
Would that being your mindset, your energy, your focus, your attention?
yeah. So that's a great metaphor. When you're camping, and or pick any pick any imaginary scenario where you're in the dark. For me, what I thought it was camping. When you shine your flashlight, you see what's in the beam of the light. The same is true with your mindset. So
Mhm.
outside of the beam of your light, there might be snakes, there might be bears, there might be critters, there might be all kinds of stuff. But because it's not in your awareness, it's not scaring you. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? So it's a
Yeah.
completely different come from. It's not that we want to get rid of the lack. There's nothing wrong with lack. At a certain point, when people make the switch and they feel like, oh my gosh, I'm so loved, I'm so supported, there's so much money flowing in my business, I have so much ease, like I'm just in the flow state, there will be a phase that you will go through, which is a reaction to what's wrong with me. But like, what's wrong with me that I'm not experiencing lack, right? I expect the other shoe to drop, right? And it's just
Yeah.
because that's how we're conditioned.
Yeah.
So, part of the answer to your question is recognizing that lack is the other. You got a pair of gloves. Lack is one of the hands and the abundance is the other hand. So if you're
Hmm.
only wearing the glove of lack, you're only wearing part of the set, and the other half that is in that you bought when you bought that pair of gloves was the other glove,
Yeah.
which is everything is available to you. And I want to give you another metaphor in a different way, which is through the lens of the word repair,
Mm.
which is very up right now at this time of year for some people. So if you think about the word repair, what do you notice? It's
We're
like a
putting things back together. We're
right. You're right.
pairing them. Hmm.
Right. You're pairing them. And so in the same way, if you have, let's say you have a piece of paper right here, which is like, let's say this is the fabric of your being. And you're like, okay, I only get to do this part of me. And you're looking for this part of you, right? Well, you separated this part of you from this part of you, but they were one thing once upon a time. So
Hmm.
when we fall into that thing of I don't have da da da, well, the other half, the thing that you separated yourself from was the having of it.
Yeah. Which it makes me feel like this is one of the powers of meditation. So we can come back to wholeness. People often say, and Chris Sarok, who guided our meditation yesterday, even said it's like a remembering,
Yeah.
right? And even remember, we're putting back together. So there's
Mhm.
that same component of these pieces of us that have been disjointed.
Yeah.
And when we look at us as whole beings, and we can bring in the aspect of wholeness into our desires, into our life and relationships and abundance, but we got a lot of evidence that supports the lack, that supports that, yeah, but I can't have that. Yeah, but
Mhm.
others do it easier. Yeah, but this
Mhm.
is just isn't meant for me. And maybe it comes from, family of origin stories or transgenerational traumas or just shitty luck sometimes that just makes us feel like, yeah, this just isn't meant for me. So
Mm.
we get evidence to support some of the yeah, but.
Mhm. So I'm really glad that you brought up the idea of evidence. I want to say something about evidence from the perspective of the multidimensional creative aspect that we started this conversation with. Evidence is the last thing that shows up. The first thing that shows up is the intuition, the nudge, the idea, the dream, right? I had a vision, I had a dream, I had a memory. I don't know where that came from, but while I was washing dishes, I got this idea, right? It comes from somewhere out here and it
Thank you.
doesn't exist yet in the physical state.
Yeah.
And then if I act on that thing, it drops into my consciousness because it was meant for me. It wouldn't have dropped into my consciousness or your consciousness if it wasn't meant for you. So the stuff that occurs to you is for you. It's because of you that you noticed it. You know, I'm sure this happens to you. This happens to me quite often where I'm walking along with my husband and I'll say, "Oh, did you see da da da?" And he's like, "No." Like he wasn't paying any attention and he totally missed it. Right? Does that ever
Yeah.
happen to you guys? Where you're walking along with somebody and you're like, "Did you see da da da?" And they're like, "No." But you saw it, but they didn't. Does it mean it doesn't exist because they didn't see it? Of course not. So in terms of the creative energy, the creative potential that every one of us has, everything exists in the non-physical. And then when you
Yeah.
start acting on it, when you start, let's say you are calling in your beloved and you start doing your inner work and you start doing your shadow work and you start falling in love with those parts of yourself that you've rejected, or those parts that you thought were unlovable, or those parts that you never got to know because you were shamed about those parts when you were younger. And you really, really devote yourself to falling in love with every single cell of your being. You're not looking for
Hmm.
something out there to love you. You're looking for you to love you so that you don't need them to love you to know that you're lovable. You're looking to know that you're lovable. So you're acting now. And all of a sudden, you start feeling love. And people start coming up to you and saying, wow, you look amazing today. And you're like, thank you. Where did that come from? Right? So the result, the evidence is the byproduct of you
Yeah,
doing the work. And you doing the work is a byproduct of you noticing your desire to have a different outcome. But the outcome, we're so conditioned to have this backwards. We're like, oh, I can't until I have the outcome. But the outcome is actually the caboose on the train. The outcome
yeah,
is following you. And it's a result of your action, your belief, the way that you're arising out of you. That
yeah.
so, and in fact, you are the evidence. It's not something outside of you that's the
Well,
evidence.
and I think this is a really key component when it comes to what I think many people are here to understand, which is you are the source. It's not the external thing that you define as abundant to make you abundant. And when we become the source of our own love, our own healing, our own acceptance, then we can let go of all of those narratives that came before that we thought we need the external validation. When we can begin to give it to ourselves, everything else really almost even doesn't matter or truly is just bonus to what we can accept. And which is why I keep coming back to it feels near impossible to make any sort of shifts in our life without a meditation practice. Right? We got to learn how to ride with the training wheels before we take them off and ride a two-wheeler. We've got to crawl before we walk. We've got to be able to get to know ourselves to even know how to move through the steps of these next iterations of our life. And so many people that I come into connection with through my work, they want the thing now, and they
Mhm.
don't recognize that the narrative of how they're defining themselves is from 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And they aren't recognizing, okay, well, I'm new now than I've ever been. My values might have changed since the last time I
Mhm.
named what those were. In relationship work, John and Julie Gottman are, one of the pinnacles of
Mhm.
relationship therapists, and they have this whole idea that we need to have what's called a sound relationship house, that before we can have higher level desires and shared interests and shared vision of the future, we got to build a strong foundation of our house, very much like Eric Erickson's
Mhm.
model of not development of a Maslow's hierarchy of needs, excuse me,
Yeah.
right? We can't have achieve higher needs until we've met the basic needs.
Mhm.
And the Gottmans have this concept of called love maps, which is I need to know who you are in the here and now, because who we were when we started dating, we had a lot of curiosity, we asked questions, I got to know you, and then we got complacent.
Mm.
And then we made assumptions. And now we're saying, well, I've been with you for so long. I know this about you without ever checking in 20 years later. Is this still your favorite flavor of ice cream? Is this still your top value? Is this still your retirement dream? And what a beautiful concept to think of doing love maps with yourself.
Mhm.
How can I get to know myself here and now? Because these desires that I want to bring into my life maybe is based on an old model of me.
Mhm. I just taught a similar thing, and I used a tree as the metaphor. And so if you think about what's the desire is the fruit on the tree, or how do I want to grow next? It's like where the crown of the tree is growing into the sky. But what's underneath that? What's underneath that is how what do you want to contribute? What's the fruit? And what's underneath that? And what's underneath that? And what's underneath that? And what's underneath that? So if you start at the foundation, what are the conditions where you really thrive? What's the
Mm,
soil that you are planting yourself in, where you feel nourished, where you feel supported, where it feels safe for you to grow? What are those conditions? And
yeah,
so often, people find themselves not experiencing the result they want because internally, deep, deep, deep down in your nervous system, we say our issues are in our tissues, right? Our nervous
right.
system keeps the score. In fact, it is the score. right? It's all these different vibrations are very much awake and alive and protecting us in our nervous system. So, what are the conditions for you for absolute safety that you feel safe in a
Yeah.
partnership with yourself before you can be in
Yeah.
partnership with anybody else? I work with a lot of clients who come to me because they want to make more money. And they're in such a toxic relationship with money where there's a part that wants money, but there's a part that's like, well, you know, I'm in this I just divorced this super narcissistic person and I'm really angry at him and I'm receiving money from this person, but like I want to support myself, but I need the money from him. And right there, like it's a conflict, right? Because you're not in a sound relationship house with yourself. Part of you wants it and part of you really doesn't want it. And part of you wants it and part of you really judges yourself for taking something from somebody that you don't respect, etc.
Hmm.
Right? So what are the conditions that are really nourishing, really safe? They're just like, it's like, you walk into your house and there's the couch and you're just like, after a long day, like that feeling of total relief. What are those conditions for you? Jot down
Yeah.
some notes so you're really clear. This is how I thrive. And
Yeah.
then once you know how you thrive, then the next thing is, what are your roots? What are you really valuing? What are you taking a stand for? I know I'm super clear. I really value kindness. And so if I'm
Mm.
a bitch to someone, not that my bitchiness isn't justified, but if I really value kindness, how can I be kinder to myself? How can I be kinder
Mm.
to the person? How can I be kinder to this situation? I really value kindness. I really value love. I really value um, Mother Nature. I really value beauty, etc. So, what are the
Hmm.
values that both are super stabilizing to you and they're the lenses that you look through the world with? Like
Yeah.
they're so core to you that you would never not do that thing because it's just so deep to you. Then the next part of it, after you know the conditions that nourish you and what will grow in those conditions, those are your roots. Well, when the roots feel safe to, you really dig down and be even more supported, then they start to rise. And so what begins to rise is your trunk. And so your trunk is
Hmm.
the part of you that's visible to the world, just like, this trunk is the part of you that's visible to the world.
Hmm.
Most people don't see our roots. Most people don't see our trauma and our wounds and our unresolvedness and our disappointments, but they've really shaped us.
Yeah.
My guess, knowing you, Jory, is that the people in this community really value kindness. They really value compassion. They really
Hmm.
value self awareness because of who you are. And
Yeah.
so they're a vibrational match to you, right? And so, what wants to express from that? So, when you look at the trunk of a tree, what do you notice? I was having this conversation with one of my clients today, and she says, well, I notice how much the tree is growing. And I said, do you ever pause and notice how much you're growing? And she's like, no,
Mm.
I notice how much I'm not growing. And I'm like, ding, 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 ding. Like, that's important, right? How do you see you? And how do you want others
Yeah.
to see you? Because really, there's only one of us here, and we're,
Right.
so how people see you and how you see you, you'd like that to be ideally congruent.
Yeah.
That's why we're all on the personal growth and personal development path, is for congruence,
Right.
isn't it? And then
Yeah.
the next phase, once you've got a trunk, is what happens. It starts to branch out. Look, your body's doing it. You've got this core thing and you've got arms, right? And you've got legs. And so what are the ways that you branched out? What are the things that are super interesting to you? So Jory, I know that you love meditation and you love travel and you love writing and you love animals and you love your children, right? So there are lots of ways, and you love community and you love food, right? So there are lots of ways that you branch out, right? And what happens at the end
Hmm.
of a branch? Look at your arms, right? I mean, it's right here in nature. After the branch, there are like twigs and leaves, right? So the next
Hmm.
phase is of your growth is, right? You can see it in your hands and your feet. But in terms of this tree metaphor, now that I know what conditions I thrive in, now that I know what I'm rooted in and what my values are, now I know how I'm rising, now I know how I'm branching out. The next phase is the leaves. What are all the ways that you're touching the world with those leaves?
Mm.
What are all the
I
ways that,
love that.
right? Because the tree is in constant exchange with water and with air and with sunlight, and as are you. And so how are
Yeah.
you exchanging your gifts, and how is the world, moving through you, because we're in this infinite collaboration. And then, from a business perspective, or from a relationship perspective, or from a health perspective, look at the things that your leaves are, and what has borne fruit. Maybe you had some
Hmm.
children. Maybe you wrote some books. Maybe you have a business and you're offering A, B, C, D, E, F, G offerings in your business, right? What are all the ways that some of the things that you put out, like they kept on growing? And then what are those things did you actually exchange? In the case of a business, you exchange a course or a program or wisdom or something for money, or
Hmm.
sometimes there's an affiliate or whatever, right? But there's some way that like money came in. In the case of a relationship with another human, you had an exchange and you co-created something. It might be another
Hmm.
human. It might be you bought a home together. It might be you built a garden
Right.
together, right? So what are the ways that you actually saw the fruits of your co-creation? And
Yeah,
then the
I
last is, what's the
love
next
this
thing that you're
visual.
expanding into?
It's such a ripe visual for understanding how much we don't see that impacts
Hmm.
everything else.
Yeah.
It's that, one of the things that I love in nature, one of my most absolute favorite things in nature that I always try to capture photos of, and it never, ever, ever does it justice, are exposed roots of trees.
Mm.
When you see, maybe if it's like a tree's on a hillside and the hill's kind of washed away, and you see the entire network of interconnectivity and the like it's never a straight line. And it's so interconnected with what's around it. Like there's something really deeply profound about exposed roots
Yeah.
because we try so hard to forget that part of ourselves. And yet it's all the same continuum. And I feel compelled to share something, and then we'll talk for a few more minutes, and we're actually going to open it up for those who are live here for questions. But there's two things I really want to say. And first off, just thank you, Deborah, for that sharing of that beautiful visual. And I saw lots of people taking notes, and so I'm really, this is how we take that conceptual and put it into something tangible that I can do, right? Because I think people who are here are in a space of, okay, I want what's next, but I need the roadmap, and we all need the tools of the roadmap. And so that was really, really beautiful. But many years ago, it was actually right after my ex-husband moved out. And it was actually exactly this time in the Jewish calendar, because I was at a bat mitzvah and I went by myself. My ex had been with my kids on vacation. And it was the very, very, very first line of the Torah. And it said, God created the world and it was good. And he didn't say it was great. He said it was good. Right. And there were days of creation, just like we all need days and moments of creation. It's not going to all happen at once. Like, allow the beauty of the evolution that naturally is going to take its course. And there's two things I want to share from that is this idea of the universe is designed to heal. Our bodies are designed to heal. And I think of this as, if you have a cut and your body, creates a scab, that's your skin repairing
Mhm.
itself. But we often energetically, literally, like pick at the scab and are like, why am I not healing? Why is this scab here? Not
Mm.
realizing we're the ones picking at it, preventing the natural course of healing to occur.
I
Right.
love
So
that.
something about that I felt compelled to share. But the other thing I felt compelled to share was, as a result from that bat mitzvah that I attended, it was really impactful. It wasn't even my synagogue, and the rabbi wasn't my rabbi, but I spoke to him afterwards, and long story short, he offered me spiritual guidance during my divorce. And I went to him a handful of times, which was very generous. And he told the story of when Moses went to the top of Mount Sinai to receive the 10 Commandments from God. And as Moses was bringing the 10 Commandments down to the people, he dropped them and they broke. So he goes back up and says, hey, God, I dropped the 10 Commandments. Can I get a new set? And when he went back down to deliver the 10 Commandments, he brought both the broken pieces and the whole set. And the rabbi said to me, we are all a little bit broken. We are all a little bit whole. And I think about this so often because we over focus on our broken pieces
Mm.
and we forget, we need to remember, put back together our belief system that we are whole. The only thing preventing
Mm.
wholeness is the belief of I'm getting in my own way.
Mm.
And it's, you know, when we think about where we're trying to get to and people want to be more satisfied, they want to be happier, more content, better relationships, what they're seeking is wholeness in themselves because this dissatisfaction is only coming from a piece of myself that feels out of alignment.
Mhm.
I
Love
hope that's
that.
making sense to you guys listening because this is the energy work of getting what you want, right?
I love
Easier said than done. It's not going to happen overnight.
well, I love what there are a couple of things I want to piggyback on what you shared. One is about the scab and what happens after the scab, if it's a really deep wound, is there's a scar. And the scar is a kind of recognition. You know, in the Odyssey, when Odysseus finally comes home after 20 years, he's recognized by his scar. He's recognized playing him not his not self. He comes home and he pretends to be a peasant or a beggar, and he's dressed in rags and he's dirty. And his nurse bathes him and sees the scar and remembers that he got that scar as a baby. So it's a way of remembering who you are. A
Mm-hmm.
scar is also showing you how much your body loves you. It's showing you how much you love you because you're still here. Because you're still here, you survive that. And that your
Yeah.
body is saying, hey, I love you. And we're bigger. Your body is bigger than the scar, right? And your presence is bigger than the scar. And so in a way, it's something that shows you how powerful you are. It shows you the healing power that you carry inside your body.
Yeah.
And the other thing that you said that I wanted to reflect on, which is we're all a little bit broken, we're all a little bit whole. This is another way of saying what we were talking about earlier, where you've got the repair is you're sewing the two sides of the material that were once one, and you rip them. And you know, we do this when someone dies, don't we? We rip fabric, and in a way, we rip the fabric of our soul when we emotionally rip ourselves and we say, "I'm not allowed to have this." You know, your wholeness is it means you get to have all of it because you are all of it. You've never not been
Mm-hmm.
all of it. It's the conditioning that sometimes is so ancient we don't even realize that we rip the fabric and we put that part over there. But all you are already all of it. You are already whole. And it's our belief system that we're not whole that keeps us from the wholeness. So in that vein, I love jigsaw puzzles. And when the pandemic first started, I just got on a chair of jigsaw puzzles and I've never gotten off of it. And the
Mm-hmm.
reason I love jigsaw puzzles so much is because you have to have a whole bunch of broken pieces, right? I mean, that's what creates the fun of the puzzle. And you dump them all out and you turn them all one way and then you sort them by color. And we do this emotionally, we do this physiologically. Where in my body do I feel that? How is that feeling familiar to another feeling? Like, is it the same color? Is it the same texture? When else did I have this? Right? We kind of sort our own inner world like jigsaw
Mm-hmm.
pieces. And then we start to put them together. And you know what? When you put together a puzzle and it's missing a piece, you're like, ah. And so that's what we're talking about, right? You're putting your life together, and the missing piece, y'all, is you.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is another way to say it's all in there. The only thing
Yeah.
getting in the way is the thought that you can't have it. And, you know, Deborah, this morning in our morning meditation and intention setting and journal prompt for the day, I did this very intentionally because it was something that you helped me with a little over a year ago. And it's this idea of what am I no longer available for?
Mm.
And, you know, to me, this was about recognizing the boundaries, the commitments, the agreements, the belief systems that were no longer serving my higher self, my highest needs, my next level of evolution. And I remember sharing this with you, like, oh, Deborah, I love this new mantra. What I'm no longer available for it. And you're like, okay, yeah, but Jory, the more you say what you're not longer available for, you're really just bringing what you're no longer available for still into your consciousness. So really the new mantra is, what am I available for?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so I just want to say thank you, because you really flipped that for me in a really beautiful way. And so for those who were, either part of the meditation this morning or listened to it on the replay, I'm wondering if we can just finish for just a moment before opening up the last 10 minutes for questions on how to have a practice around switching that belief system from what I'm not available for to what I'm available for. It's energy work, it's awareness, right? What else would you add for that?
What would I add? You're asking me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, so what I would add in meditation, just watch the thoughts like clouds moving through the sky. They're going to come up. They're supposed to. That's how we're all wired. It's the chitta vritti of the mind. Just watch them come up and give yourself 100% permission to watch them, right? And watch how you watch your thought, because it's not the thought that matters. The thought actually doesn't matter. What's in Buddhism, we call this the second arrow.
Mm-hmm.
So the thought is, oh, they're mad at me. But then how do you react to the thought of they're mad at me? Oh, I'm a failure. I screwed up. I'm going to get kicked out. They're not going to like me. They're not going to give me a raise. I'm going to get fired, whatever, right? It's the second arrow. It's how
Right.
we think about the thought that we're thinking. So let it be there. Let it be there. And there are so many ways to work with it. Counting the breath is a very simple way. Just notice when the mind wanders. It's like a little puppy getting into poison ivy. Just bring it back, count the breath without getting mad at the mind, without yanking on the leash, without yelling at it. I'm part dog. I don't know if you've seen my dog going back and forth in the house.
Yeah, my dog was in and out, and our dogs have very similar names, Buddha, and you're just Bodhi, right?
Bodhi, right? Yeah. Right. So I just really I just watch the thought and I bring my awareness back to the breath. And so that's one way. Another way is even more intentional than counting the breath, which is thinking, thinking, thinking. Just let your mind observe you thinking. You don't have to go down the hole of judgment. You don't have to chase the thought into the poison ivy, because then you're going to get the poison ivy all over you. And then you're going to be like, this thought, right? It's really itchy.
And then
So,
you're going to blame the dog, and then
right.
there's
And then
going to be a
it's
whole like
exactly.
externalization of all the issues.
Exactly. Right. So another way is just simply just watch, just thinking. You can also name. We call this labeling, and I'm sure you've talked about this with Jory before, where you just label, oh, anxious,
Just
oh,
name it.
yeah, just name
Yeah.
it, because in the same way that your brain doesn't know the difference between reality and imagination, your brain only lives in the now. And so if you're dragging it into the past becomes alive now because of you activating the memory. So you bring the now moment into aliveness now by your awareness. And so
And we also bring the future unknown moment through
right,
anxiety into the now.
right. Yeah.
Deborah, I said this to you the other day. I think on our Instagram live, like I just can't wait for the day you and I are just sitting, sharing a cup of tea, on the side of some lake somewhere, just in the most peaceful environment. Because I absolutely just love your energy and your wisdom, and I know I could talk to you for hours. So I just want to say thank you for your time, your beautiful congruence of energy and alignment. And I would love, we've got 10 minutes left. For those who are here live, I invite you to turn on your camera, and hey, you guys got 10 minutes to ask Deborah a question. So I would take advantage of it, because she has so much wisdom to share. And please, let's open it up and create a little bit more conversation. Anything that we spoke about, anything that's on your mind, can be tangible, can be esoteric, around, okay, how do I change this belief system if this is what I've always been conditioned? Or how do I change that energy relationship to money? Or how do I bring in abundance when I've only been conditioned through lack? So anyone want to pop in with a question, just feel free to turn off your mute and jump on in.
I'll jump in.
Hey, Morgan,
Hi,
welcome.
thank you. Uh, my, yeah, a lot to meditate on there. I think I want to let all of that percolate through my mind and see what rises from it. Thank you both. The the thought that I seem to be hanging on to that I want to ask about came from the flashlight metaphor, and what my brain focused on there was, okay, we're shining the flashlight on things that serve us. And to do the camping, there's a scary bear there that I'm not shining my flashlight on. It still exists. The bear still exists. So what do you say to that, or to a person who thinks that by not shining the light, as it will, on the scary thing, that you're not prepared for what may come up that's scary?
So is your question that you're feeling not prepared to meet the challenges that may or may not be there?
Correct.
Hmm. Do you feel capable of meeting challenges that may or may not be present in your life?
It's a big question.
Mm-hmm.
Can it be a yes and, in the words of Jory?
Of course, of
Yeah.
course. So I would invite you to sit with, what are the parts of you that already feel super capable? Begin there. Start with what you know. Start with where you are, because that's the only place we can start, is in the now moment. So what are the parts of you where you feel super capable, where you feel super well resourced?
Mm.
And you can share here or journal about it. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I just want to invite you to recognize there are parts of you that you already feel super, super resourced, super stable, super secure, super confident, super, I know I can handle this.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, there are some of those.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so this is like meta meditation. So in meta meditation, we start with the closest circle in, which is sending loving kindness to those parts of ourselves that we love, or to people that we love. Depending on how you practice it, it might be you focus on you, it might be you focus on someone you love. So then the next widening of the circle is recognizing and honoring those parts of you where you are growing into your next level capability. You're learning some skills. For example, let's say you really want to get good at skiing black diamond mogul runs, but all you've ever done is green. So you know, for you to become a better skier, at some point, you're going to have to get yourself into some moguls, because there's no other way you're going to learn. If you want to train to run a marathon, at some point, you're going to have to run farther than you ever run before. Right? Let's say all you ever run is a 4-mile loop, same 4-mile loop, but you really want to run a marathon. At some point, you're going to have to go 6. And your body's going to realize, oh, I just did 6 miles. Well, yay me. And then in another day, you're going to go to 8, and your body's going to go, wow, I didn't think I could do that, but I ran 8. I've never done that before. And then, next week or 2, you're going to jump to 10, and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I just ran 10. I'd never done that before. And then you're going to sign up to run a half, right? And you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I just ran a half marathon. I've never done that before. So extend your awareness to what are the parts of you that have a desire and you've never done it before, but you know that you're growing into the next version of you. And can those parts of you also receive this vote of encouragement and confidence and certainty from you that you're capable, that see you as capable?
I love that, Deborah. That's so
I'm
beautiful.
crying.
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
crying so much. It must have touched the
Yeah,
right
beautiful.
nerve, right?
And so I want to say one more thing, but because like you just tapped a part of your power that's arising, a part of you that you didn't give permission to ever be here before. Now you're letting it come up just by you giving it permission to be in the house. That's part of the sound house that Jory was talking about, where like up until this moment, those parts you weren't allowed to be in the house. And now all of a sudden they're allowed to be here. And they're like, oh my gosh, Morgan loves me. She's letting me in. Okay, so the next part, if you feel resourced and your nervous system feels okay with it, could you also include those parts of you that have no fucking clue how it's going to happen?
Hmm.
And I'm using the F-bomb intentionally.
Please. Yes.
Because sometimes we talk to ourselves like that. We're just like, nah, there's no way. Right. But there is a way, because you are the way, because you're all of it. So just open your awareness a little bit wider. What if you're wrong about you? Ego doesn't like that part, but just let the ego not like that part. Well, I don't want to be wrong about me, but just let the ego just be in. It's like, and let the part of you that actually has been knocking for years, let that part in at the party. Okay, that's my quick way to open and just recognize, wow, there's so much energy flowing through my system right now. And be really gentle with that part of you that's receiving. You just turned on a bunch of circuits that had been blacked out a moment ago. So just stay inside. You're doing it perfectly with your eyes closed, and let your hands go to wherever in your body. You just want to reassure yourself it's okay. I got this. I got this. Does that help answer your question?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for asking.
I'd love to add one more piece to that is very real for me in this moment. And it's going to bring a little bit of levity, but also a lot of deep truth. I leave on Sunday for Africa for 3.5 weeks. And this is very much out of my comfort zone. And it's funny to see where my mind is going of some other fears. And as a woman who has a small bladder, I have to pee a lot. And I'm like, how am I going to go out on this like 6-hour game drive and not have to pee? Like, what am I going to do? And what about these night drives where like it might be actually dangerous? And I was talking to someone at Pilates about this today, and she said when she was on safari, there was a young girl on her in her caravan who had to pee. It was dark, and but she said, you know, the staff is well prepared to deal with this. And she said, so she got out to pee while all of the guides stood around her with guns ready to shoot the lion. And so, Morgan, I want to remind you, even if your flashlight is shining on something that there might be others in the dark, you're generally not there alone, and you have support who's going to back you up in the dark, because you might not see that either. Right. And we're never fully alone. And so, you know, I might be afraid to pee at night in the dark, but there's going to be some guy, you know, protecting me. So this camping metaphor, you know, when I got the email saying for camping or tenting in the middle of Serengeti, in the middle of nowhere amongst lions, hyenas, and elephants, there's going to be a lot of things in the dark. So it's going to be, am I going to over focus on what I think may be there or what couldn't be there? Like, what am I choosing to give my energy to? And then checking in to say, when I focus on that, how am I feeling? And I have the power to shift how I feel by shifting the thought and the energy and the attention. So some levity and also deep truth. Well, thank you, Deborah, so much. We're just up to the top of the hour. And Morgan, thank you for your question. I'm sure you spoke for many with that very insightful and real what if. Like, how do I do this? Right. And this is how we're bridging this conceptual to the tangible. And yet it all comes back to how are we meeting ourselves?
Yeah. And, you know, we never know. We never know, because as creators, we're always creating. We never know what's going to happen. And we're not in control of what's going to happen. The only thing you are in control in is the question that I asked you when you said, wow, that's a big question, which is, do I feel capable of handling this? Do I feel resourceful? Do I feel creative? Do I trust that I will know how to respond in the moment? And if the answer is yes, then what are you going to worry about? You know, the Dalai Lama says about worry, it's so simple. If there's a solution, go straight to the solution. Like, why worry about it? If you know what the answer is, just go straight to the solution. And if there isn't a solution, well, then why worry about it? Because there's no solution. Right? And our minds are so clever at catastrophizing and living out here in the unknown. And, you know, it may or may not ever happen. So use the imaginative creative power of your mind that's making up a story about something that doesn't exist yet, and make up a story that totally encourages you, and it totally inspires you, and it totally delights you, and it totally excites you. And it's good for humanity, and it's good for your soul, and it just lights your creativity, and it lights your soul in a way that you're just so, self-illumined and glowing from within because of the story that you're telling. Because either story
Yeah.
is your story, and neither story is more true. It's just, which one do you believe?
Yeah. And I think to really give yourself the compassion, and again, we know this from actually the Gottman's research on relationship, 67% of relationship issues can't be solved. So if we could accept that there's actually no solution to a lot of the things, how might we relate differently? Would we be in less resistance or fighting, and to say, can I let it be okay? This is uncomfortable. Can I let it be okay that I don't know what to do in this moment, knowing that letting it be okay is what I'm doing?
Hmm. Yeah, you just said something really important. Can I be okay with not knowing?
Yeah.
It's the conscious mind that says I have to know everything. And it's the conscious mind that says I have to know everything and I'm in trouble if I don't. And I have to have evidence and I better not do it wrong. And right, everything is waiting for me to make a mistake. You're a creator. You're creating it. Your
Yeah.
energy that's flowing through this beautiful Tupperware known as your body, and you're filtering that, and you're creating amazingness with your consciousness. You're
Yeah.
creating amazingness with the creativity that you're made of.
We got to wrap it up, otherwise we're going to keep talking, Deborah. So I want to say deep, deep, deep bows of gratitude for you for coming in and really setting the tone for the rest of our week. I'm very much grateful to have you in my life and to welcome you into the Greater Journey Forward community, and to all of you who have taken the time out of your day, whether live or in the replay. I hope that you got more than you knew you were going to receive, because we had an expectation of what it was going to be, and then it's always more than what we thought it was going to be when we allow that to seep in. And tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific time, we'll have yet another meditation, more journal prompts, setting the stage for tomorrow, which is going to be Shonda Morales on mindful motherhood, creating balance in our lives. So I look forward to tuning in with you all on Tuesday. And again, just thank you all for being here. But most importantly, thank yourself for the commitment of showing up, because you're worth it. And you are worthy of your time and energy and attention into your own desires. So, and you guys follow Deborah online if you don't already. She sends out beautifully inspiring emails and puts great stuff out. So I want to support her growth and community and just continue to expand our beautiful networks of interconnectivity, just like the roots under the trees, all connecting. So thank you all
Thank
so
you.
much. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you all.